may be watching this because you can't get to work this morning, because rail commuters on some of the country's busiest routes have had their journeys disrupted or cancelled due to the strike action by the train drivers' union.
The boss of ASLEF says workers in the union will keep striking until their pay dispute is resolved. The Housing Minister, Lee Rowley, joins us now from Westminster. With no disrespect to you, we might have expected the Transport Minister to be out on such a significant morning. But as you are the government spokesperson this morning, we'll have to put the train questions to you. And I think Mandy on email today sums it all up. When is the government going to get a grip of the train strikes? Morning.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
I hope you're well. We don't want the train strikes to happen. We don't want the unions to be striking. We don't think this is necessary. There is a reasonable offer on the table for a group of people who already earn £60,000 plus in many instances, and they should stop striking. It's as simple as that.
Your great battleship on this was this legislation that you passed a few weeks ago, which would give the rail operators mandatory powers to run at least a 40% service. And not one of them have taken advantage of those new legal rights and privileges. Why not?
Well, I hope they will. The Prime Minister has said he's disappointed that isn't the case. The job of government, the job of Parliament, the job of MPs is to provide bits of the state, to provide organisations, to provide sectors with the opportunity and the tools to be able to do things. We've provided the rail companies with the tools to run minimum services. We hope they will do so in future, although I hope that the strikes won't happen any longer.
Well, all right, hang on. You say you don't know why they haven't enforced the powers. Well, I'll tell you. It's because the unions threatened that they'd extend the strike action if they did. So basically, this flagship policy, which you launched with a huge amount of hoo-ha a few weeks ago, has just been sunk on its first voyage out of harbour.
Well, as I say, we hope they will be used. But the fundamental point, whether you use minimum service levels or you don't, is that strikes shouldn't happen, and strikes shouldn't happen when they aren't reasonable. This strike isn't reasonable. This is the unions who are causing misery for commuters up and down the country, including...
You said it shouldn't happen, but it is happening.
And it shouldn't.
Yeah, well,
and it's the responsibility, Richard, of the unions to stop that.
But the reality is, Minister, that the strike is happening. You can go on all you like about you not wanting it and nobody wanting it, but it's happening. And so the opening question still stands. When are you going to get a grip?
And the choice to strike is ASLEF. The choice to strike here, the choice to inconvenience people is ASLEF. The choice to not run these trains for people who earn £60,000 already is ASLEF. They are the ones that are being unreasonable. We have brought in additional tools to make sure that the rail operators and other sectors have, over the medium and long term, the ability to still run services.
But Minister,
we hope
sorry
they
to
will
interrupt,
be used,
but
and we want the strike to stop.
You do know what the purpose of a union is, don't you? It's not to defend the government, it's to defend their members. So ASLEF are doing what they believe is right by their members. Christian on email says, I'm a train driver for Northern Rail. Yes, we've been offered a 4% pay rise, but with several terms and conditions and cuts attached, it's the terms and conditions and cuts where the sticking point is. We haven't had a pay rise since 2019. So ASLEF is taking action. The government is neither negotiating with the union to improve the offer. The Transport Secretary, we understand, hasn't met Mick Whelan of ASLEF for a year. And the legislation you introduced for minimum services doesn't work. So the union's doing its job. What's the government doing?
The union is certainly not doing its job by inconveniencing commuters in the way they are. I come from an area with a very heavy trade union past. Some of my family were involved in trade unions a number of years ago.
And the reason I'm a conservative,
Susanna, if I can just answer your previous question, Susanna. The reason I don't support what the union activity, the reason I'm a conservative is because unions have a choice about whether to act responsibly or not to act responsibly. I don't think ASLEF are acting responsibly today. They are inconveniencing commuters. There is an offer on the table. The union should take it.
So what are you going to... You say they're not acting responsibly. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, ultimately, the unions have a right to strike if they wish. Unless we're in a discussion, Richard, about removing the right to strike, which would be quite a fundamental change and not one that, much as I don't like what the unions are doing,
actually, Minister, I was going to suggest the N-word, negotiation. What about a bit of negotiation? Wouldn't that help?
There has been a significant amount of discussion between the rail operators and the unions over a course of many months. But ultimately, if the unions don't want to act responsibly, then they will make choices. I think this choice is irresponsible. It shouldn't happen, and it should stop.
They say they want to talk to you, but you won't talk to them.
If the unions want to go and explain to people in my constituency in North East Derbyshire why they are striking, why they are stopping commuters getting to work, why they are impacting families from getting together with average wages of £60,000, then I would be interested if they want to do that. It doesn't pass the smell test. They should stop it. They should act reasonably. They should get back to work.
The government's speciality in these industrial disputes seems to be banging the door shut. You won't talk to the junior doctors either. You won't talk to anyone.
What we've said all across, there's obviously a period where there has been more union issues than there was a number of years ago. That's down to inflation. It's down to, and inflation is caused by all of the global circumstances which we've been in. We're seeing similar union issues in other countries. What the government is trying to say is there is a responsible way through here. We'll do what we can. We'll improve circumstances where we can. We'll put deals on the table where we can. But unions have got to be responsible in all of these sectors to recognise that some of the requests for pay increases, which were huge, are just not reasonable. They have to be paid by taxpayers. They have to be paid by people like you and me. We can't do that. We've got to look at the broader scheme of the public finances to make sure that we keep this country working for the long term as part of the Prime Minister's plan, which moves us forward.
So it feels to us here on the programme that the government's approach is simply to tell the unions, stop striking. Hasn't worked for a number of years, doesn't sound like you're going to get back in the room with them. So what do you say to passengers this morning? You're just going to have to put up with it? Because we're hurtling towards a general election. We know that waiting lists for the NHS are out of control. We know that junior doctors still haven't come to a resolution. Our trains aren't running properly. The Prime Minister seems to want to talk about vapes and fasting. When are you going to make public services run properly?
There's been significant progress, Susanna, in terms of industrial disputes over recent months. Nurses, other sectors, all of which deals have been agreed with. So it's not true to suggest that isn't the case. But equally, a responsible government has to say, we can do this, we can ask taxpayers to shoulder this amount of burden, but we can't go further. We will negotiate, we'll discuss in good faith, all the relevant people will negotiate and discuss in good faith, but we can only go so far. That's exactly what the Prime Minister's doing. The Prime Minister's got a plan to get us through difficult economic circumstances, which means making difficult choices like this. This contrasts with the union-backed Labour Party, who neither have a plan and would take us right back to square one.
The Prime Minister's also got to announce the date of the next general election. It's not that far off now. You're still way behind in the opinion polls. We know things can change in politics, but it seems very unlikely. I have to ask you, are you basically clearing your desk?
Absolutely not. This is a huge choice for the country this year. I believe in the Conservative Party. I stood for election for the Conservatives. I'm going to stand for election again because I believe that this country has gone through extraordinary circumstances in the past 4 years, which nobody expected. And the Conservative Party have tried to get us through that. We've got this plan to keep going to a brighter future, and we have to do it. We have to do it for my constituents and the country as a whole. The Conservative Party has a lot to offer this country, and we have to make sure that we make that offer, because the Labour Party are going to take this country backwards. They're going to take us back to square one.
A lot of your ministerial colleagues are strongly predicted to be kicked out, you know.
Well, as I say, I don't pay attention to every single opinion poll that goes on. It's no argument that the Conservatives are not in a place where I hope we will be before the election. But there is a huge amount to play for. It is all to play for. The Conservatives have been very successful over many decades in winning the confidence and trust of the British people. We're going to make that case. We're going to be very clear. We've got a plan. We've taken us through difficult circumstances so far. We want to continue to do that, and we want to get to that brighter future that everybody wants in this country.
OK. Well, the electorate will be the judge of that when the election is called. Thank you very much indeed, Lee Rowley.